The Dodgers are done with the Cactus League for this year. Yoshinobu Yamamoto made his final spring training start, and it had its ups and downs for the most part. Pretty good, but, are we concerned? There's plenty to talk about. So let's do that on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snyder. My co-host is Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like a lot of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And Vince, our boys in blue finished their Cactus League schedule. They lost to the Mariners, so they close out the Cactus League, I think 13-5-1. Solid spring training. Obviously, spring training records matter roughly zero. I think you mentioned the Angels have won the Cactus League the last few years, and I don't know if you knew that, but that didn't turn out great for them. But the Dodgers had a good spring training, and this game they lost. And the loss, if you care about wins and losses in spring training, goes to Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He looked really, really good for the first 3 innings. And then second time through the lineup, the Mariners, they got to him and seemed like they were pretty aggressive going after the first pitch. And, they had at one point, I think 5 straight hits in the fourth inning. He ended up giving up 4 runs in just under 5 innings, 4 2/3 or something. And all in all, probably if we were scripting it, we probably would have preferred a better closing spring out of Yamamoto. But I don't know about you, Vince, and that's not even just a way of segueing to ask you what you think. I really don't have any idea what you think. I didn't feel really that much concern. Did you?
They got to him in the stretch again, which is obviously a little bit concerning. Now that's happened back-to-back times. Again, last time he mentioned that he was working on something. This time, I don't remember seeing him say anything like that. So in that sense, I was, there's a little bit of concern just in general, not concern for the long term, just concern for okay, he's, something's up when he's in the stretch, whether it's, a combination of the Mariners changing their game plan and him pitching from the stretch he's had some struggles with or whatever the case. But in the long term, no. I mean, he still had the strikeouts, still had the swing and miss, looked really good those first couple innings, and they, kind of switched up on them. And that's what baseball is, a game of adjustments. Pitchers adjust, hitters adjust, pitchers adjust, hitters adjust. And, I would imagine that he's going to have that time to adjust. The Dodgers will have things for him to work on or that they saw or whatever the case. So not a oh my God, Yamamoto's not going to be good. Because even with everything, it's still 4 runs, it's still 8 hits, but there wasn't any home runs, there wasn't any, balls in the gap. It was a lot of singles. The Mariners were just putting the bat on the ball pretty well. And for a guy who throws a lot of strikes like Yamamoto, I mean, we've seen this with Kershaw. The way teams beat Kershaw in the past have been to swing early in the count because Kershaw tries to get 0-1 every time he's out there. And Yamamoto is a similar guy. And, you just have to make those adjustments, whether it's changing your pitch, selection or whatever. So, yeah, long-term, not concerned. Short-term, it's okay, maybe that it's not going to be all, roses and everything or whatever they say.
Yeah, and he was getting a lot of swing and miss. He had plenty of strikeouts in the outing, kind of just like last time. He had his fair share of strikeouts. For me, I think the reason I wasn't concerned is I felt like this was 100% pitch selection. Last time when he struggled, there was a lot of command issues. He wasn't putting the ball where he wanted to. This time, I think he was. I think he just, where he wanted to put it wasn't the best place to put it on, and like you said, that jumping on the first pitch. I think, if he was going to learn that lesson the hard way of, you got to pitch on the edges to start an at bat, start a guy off with the, an off-speed pitch or whatever. I'd much rather have him learn that in a meaningless game in the Cactus League than in a, a meaningful game in Korea or in Los Angeles or, any other game that actually counts. And so for me, I do think this probably was a valuable lesson. And honestly, that, reading body language, it seemed like there wasn't much concern among anybody on the Dodgers when Dave Roberts came out to take him out of the game. Roberts was all smiles. Yamamoto was all smiles. This didn't look like a guy who just got knocked around. It looked like a guy who, okay, I need to go get myself stretched out to 75 pitches because I'm pitching a game that matters in a week, and the results don't actually matter much. And so, the fact that they were both in such a good mood when he came out of the game really kind of makes me feel like if they're not concerned, why should I be,
Yeah, all in all, like I said, I don't think it's anything huge. But it does show you how he can get beat. We saw the words from Freddie Freeman and those guys in his first couple of bullpen sessions, and we've seen him work in the World Baseball Classic and everything else. And even in the World Baseball Classic, he in the game against Mexico, he wasn't perfect. He was losing when he left that game. So like there is ways to beat him, and I think it's one of those where okay, now if teams figure that out, you have something else to go to. And I think that's where we weren't going to see that in a spring training game. Like, realistically, he's out there, like you said, to get stretched out to 75 pitches in a real game. I would imagine he would have made an adjustment and gone to more breaking speed or breaking balls or gone to more pitches out of the zone. Even if he starts off 1-0, he has good enough control and command to get back into the count to throw hitters off. So, again, it's all relative to what it is, spring training. And in a week or in a day, we're going to see what it is for reals.
Yeah. It's pretty exciting. The Cactus League Cactus League's not over. It's still going, but for the Dodgers, it's over. By around the time that you're listening to this, the Dodgers are probably getting on an airplane and heading to Korea. One of the people who we don't know for sure if he will be getting on the airplane, we assume he will, but I'm a little bit nervous about it. And that's Will Smith. He missed this game on Wednesday with lower back tightness. And that makes me scared. We're going to come back in a minute and talk about how scary that is to me. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. I mentioned as around the time you're listening to this, the Dodgers getting on an airplane. Well, at the same time, I am getting in my Suburban with my two sons to drive to Arizona for a baseball tournament. And our Fire TV stick will be an indispensable part of that road trip because we've got an HDMI port and a power outlet in our car and a TV screen. And so the boys will pop in that Fire TV stick and they can watch anything they want, Amazon, Prime Video, Hulu, any of that stuff. They can do it on the Fire TV stick. And then when we get to our hotel, they can plug it in the hotel room. It's such a nifty little thing. If you don't have a Fire TV stick, you really ought to get one. And Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just make your $5 bet. It doesn't have to be a huge bet. Pick something that you're sure about. Doesn't have, easy odds. Pick, the #1 seed to win their first game, and boom, $5 bet. You win that bet, you get $200 in bonus bets. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Hey, we're back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Especially want to thank our everydayers, those of you who are watching or listening every weekday morning. If you're not an everydayer, it's really easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. Wherever you're watching or listening right now, you can make that easy by subscribing. You can also go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. That's a text message-based service where we text our thoughts on news and rumors and stuff that's going on periodically, and you can reply. We have one-on-one text conversations. We're having a lot of fun with our insiders over there. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's just a few bucks a month, and there's a free 14-day trial. And also be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network, covering the entire world of sports or the entire world of Los Angeles sports, whichever you prefer. Check out those two channels. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comment section. It's always fun going back and forth there. If you're listening on the podcast, you can give us your thoughts on email, via email or social media or whatever. We'll give you all that contact info at the end, like we always do. So, Vince, Will Smith was originally in the lineup for the Cactus League finale for the Dodgers, and then he was a late scratch with lower back tightness, and nobody seemed very concerned. I'm sure it was precautionary, his back doesn't feel great. Well, maybe let's not have him squat for an hour right before he gets on a 16-hour plane ride. I get it, but once bitten, twice shy, as some hairband said in the 80s. I still have flashbacks to 2014 when Clayton Kershaw had a back issue flare up on the flight back from Australia. He missed a couple weeks, and it still had one of his best seasons that year. But ultimately, that was kind of the beginning of a long run of injuries for Clayton Kershaw, and it scares me. So having Will Smith having back issues already heading into the long flight makes me even more nervous. Do you think there's any chance that the Dodgers, just out of an abundance of caution, say, hey, Will, why don't you stay here in Arizona? We'll take Hunter Fiducia instead, and we will go play a couple games, and you stay here and rest up that back so you're ready on March 28th.
Would he be able to go on March 20th? Is the roster different? They don't have to put him on the injured list or anything?
Yeah, I don't think they'd have to put him on the injured list. Yeah, I know they have different rules for the roster. But yeah, I actually don't know. It's because it's the same number of players, but you don't need, I can't imagine they're going to make the Dodgers put James Paxton on the active roster, even though there's no way in the world he's going to pitch. Yeah, I would assume that they could do that. And, but yeah, I guess I don't know that for sure.
Yeah. I don't think that would play a huge part of it anyways. If they did have to put it on the injured list, he would miss, if it goes by days, a couple games. If it goes by games, a handful of games, not a big deal. I guess it depends what kind of back tightness this is. I mean, there's variations of it, or with Dodgers and with teams, you never exactly know. Maybe Will Smith just, didn't feel like playing today, and maybe I don't know. We don't know that. There's back tightness in the sense of, hey, maybe he had a really hard workout in the gym early in the day, and he felt a little bit of his back, or he was sore, or maybe he legitimately had back tightness. We don't know.
Or somebody overheard him saying, "Oh man, I'm getting old."
Yeah, exactly. So to that degree, yeah, the chance of him not going to Korea is very possible. I would imagine the Dodgers aren't going to put anything at risk for somebody that's going to bat in the middle of their lineup for 2 games. And realistically, MLB, as much as Will Smith is one of the best catchers in the game, I don't think MLB, marketing-wise, is not too concerned about Will Smith missing a couple games when the Dodgers have all that other star power. So there's a lot to consider when it comes down to, will he go or not? Ultimately, we don't know, but I don't know how that flight is. Do they all have lay flats, or are they taking multiple planes? I don't know. Did they learn anything from last time compared to this time? There's a lot of questions to be answered here, but I can understand the general concern.
Yeah, it's I wondered that too about if they're taking multiple planes, like take 5 planes. So you only got, because you figure with the 31 players they can take, plus the coaching staff, plus, Joe Davis and Oral Hershiser, and I assume Kirsten Watson's going, the social media team's probably going. So, I mean, it's probably a traveling party of 60 people or so. And that's, I don't even know what they're doing with spouses, if they are letting them fly on the team with the team, or if they have to fly separately. So, but it will be interesting to, I assume we will find out at some point. Somebody will ask the traveling secretary what all the arrangements were. And maybe, if Will Smith can lay down and, with the ice pack under his back for the whole 16-hour flight, it's not too bad. I think I am just paranoid, but especially, although I've been thinking more about the injured list. It's only March 13th as we're recording this. We're still 15 days away from the home opener, and the injured list is 10 days. So I assume either way, I'd have to, that's one part of the rule book I haven't studied very much, is the rules of the injured list, but because that changes like every CBA. It's so annoying. I guess if they did, that was the other thing. I had some super pleasant conversations, because I tweeted out that if I was the Dodgers, I'd just tell Will Smith to stay home and just say, Hunter Fiducia, you're our starting catcher for those first 2 games. And the Austin Barnes stands came out and, yelled at me about, Austin Barnes is the backup. So if the starter can't go, then Austin Barnes is the starter. And, for me personally, Austin Barnes would remain the backup, because I do think Hunter Fiducia is a better hitter than Austin Barnes and has a better arm than Austin Barnes. And, probably at this point in his career isn't as good a game caller as Austin Barnes. But, for me, I don't want to get up at 4 a.m. to watch Austin Barnes taking at bats, but, I don't know. Would you be a Austin Barnes as the starter for those 2 games if Will Smith couldn't go, or would you rather see Hunter Fiducia?
I guess it would depend. Glasnow and Yamamoto are both new, so they could have potentially worked just as much with Fiducia as Barnes in a bullpen session. Obviously, Barnes has been catching some of these games that these guys have thrown. So ultimately, realistically, Barnes would start. That's what's going to happen. But 2, I think just if you're going to have the one out for sure in your lineup, but Glasnow and Yamamoto feel more comfortable with Barnes, then obviously I would succumb to that. If it was games like postseason, and Fiducia had a really good year in the minors or whatever the case was, maybe even had a stint in the majors and showed promise, and then Barnes, it would depend on everything else. But I think that would be more of a question for me of, okay, I don't know, does Barnes, how much does that all really matter? Because they've had Barnes catch guys in the past and it didn't always work out.
Yeah, and I guess the last question is, Austin Barnes missed a game just a couple days ago with back tightness. And so now you have 2 catchers, both of your catchers with bulky backs before getting on a long plane ride. Would you consider bringing both Fiducia and Diego Cartaya on the taxi squad, even though you're limited to only 5 players on the taxi squad? Would you bring both of those guys just in case one or both of the backs cramp up on the flight over?
Well, imagine you have to.
You have to bring one, I'm sure. You got to have a third catcher.
Does taxi, do the guys that are playing the exhibition games, does that count to our taxi squad?
It does, yeah.
So there's only going to be 31 guys total that can play in games? That's
my understanding.
Okay, so if that's the case, I would imagine you can still bring both of them. And, if somebody needs to get replaced, they can get replaced. I don't think you're going to go out there with 3 catchers, one gets hurt, and then you're one injury away from only having 1 catcher. So I would imagine they got to be bringing at least 4 catchers, whether they're on the actual roster or not. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's I'm sure they're going to bring Fiducia as to be on the taxi squad as the third catcher. But I would guess that before a couple days ago, when the backs started hurting, that they hadn't even considered bringing Cartaya too. because Cartaya isn't ready for the big leagues, but he is the other catcher on the 40-man roster. And so he would be,
rushing too, right?
Rushing's not on the 40-man roster.
I thought they have 5 catchers on the 40-man.
I don't think so.
Only 4? All right.
I think it's just 4, which is too many. Yeah, we've talked about them having too many guys on the roster. They've just got the 4 guys. No, Rushing isn't on the 40-man roster. And so, it's got to be those guys. So, I guess I would still guess that it's just Fiducia on the taxi squad. So they bring Smith, Barnes, and Fiducia. But I do wonder if they've at least kicked around the idea of, you don't want to use two of your taxi squad spots on 2 catchers who 99% likely aren't going to be needed. You're more likely to need an extra relief pitcher on your taxi squad or whatever. But with these back questions, I wonder if they are thinking about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, hopefully we're going to find out that Will Smith's back is just fine and the flight went just fine and everything went just fine. But for right now, it has me worried. One interesting tidbit that didn't happen to the Dodgers, but in the Dodgers division, the Padres woke up after a sleepy offseason, which saw them trade Juan Soto and not re-sign the reigning Cy Young Award winner. But they made a trade for maybe the best pitcher available on the trade market, Dylan Cease. We're going to dig into that trade a little bit and talk about what that means for the Dodgers, what it means for the Padres, and what it means for the league. So thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for the playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. So get in on the excitement with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And my pick, BYU is playing against Texas Tech this morning, Thursday morning. And Fousseyni Traore, his more or less is 5.5 rebounds. I am smashing more on that. And I'd probably his more or less on points is points plus rebounds plus assists is 17.5. I'm smashing more on that too, because he's going to have a dozen rebounds, and that gets you almost so easy more on the rebounds and gets him most of the way there on the points plus rebounds plus assists. So Fousseyni Traore, if you haven't heard the name, you're going to hear it a lot this March. So choose more on him, or at least I will be. And download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Hey, we're back. Thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Especially thank you to our everydayers. Remember to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Remember to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. And be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today on the 20th of March. They will be premiering our season preview episodes where we recorded with all the other Locked On hosts talking about what's going to happen this season. So all sorts of good stuff there. You can hear me picking on some of the other National League West hosts, especially Javi from Locked On Padres. I love picking on him. There's a little bit of that there. And a lot more love for the Rockies than you might have thought on that episode. So there's your teaser for that. Check that out on March 20th. Big news. I was driving with my family up to Salt Lake City to watch the Harlem Globetrotters this evening. And as I was driving, my son said, the Padres traded for Dylan Cease. And I thought, my son must have forgot how to read, because there's no way that sentence is accurate. But turns out my 17-year-old son can read, and the Padres really did trade for Dylan Cease. It's official now. The White Sox at least have announced it. I assume the Padres have too. And the Padres sent 4 players, one major leaguer, Steven Wilson, a relief pitcher, and then Drew Thorpe, who they just got from the Yankees in the Juan Soto trade, along with tell me the other names: Vince Zavala
and Haido Iridia or something like that.
That's why I made Vince say that one. Anyway, 3 of the Padres' top 10-ish prospects, depending on which list you look at, but probably like 4, 7, and 8 or so in their system. But I think Thorpe is the only one who's like a consensus top 100 prospect. And so for me, after having heard some of the stories about what the White Sox were asking for from different teams for Dylan Cease, my first instinct was this seems a little bit lighter than I might have expected.
I think it's quality over like one, or quantity over like one quality. We know that they're reportedly asking from the Yankees for one of their top guys, Spencer Jones, I think his name is. And I don't know if it would have been like just Spencer Jones and maybe like a couple Flyer prospects or whatever. This is, Thorpe is lower end of the top 100. I think Zavala, I saw a couple places have him right outside their top 100. So, maybe with a good season, he would have been in that top 100 next year. So, for what it is, I've seen more positive for the White Sox than negative in terms of people that actually know about prospects more than I do, in the sense of that these guys can come out. Like Thorpe could be in the rotation right now, realistically, and he probably will be. Depending, I don't know who else the White Sox have, to be honest. But he can get in there. Zavala could get there later this season or next season. And then, one guy's already an effective reliever who they could flip at the deadline for more prospects. So from what we've heard, especially not knowing every other team's situation with prospects, I had heard of Drew Thorpe only because they had just got him. Hadn't heard of the other guys from the Padres, not even the reliever, really, realistically. And it seems to be good for all sides, but surprising on the Padres side, they were named late in these negotiations. Rosenthal had them in there this morning, I believe, or Wednesday morning with the Rangers and Yankees. And it just confounds me as what the Padres are doing. They did need pitching, but why didn't you just keep Soto then? If, obviously a money thing, but I don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting. And obviously you can tell it's definitely money because they traded prospects for Dylan Cease instead of trying to bring back the reigning Cy Young Award winner, Blake Snell, because Snell's going to get paid more than Cease. I do think the White Sox are doing a pretty good job of kind of rebuilding their system between this trade and the trade with the Dodgers last year, because Nick Nastrini and Jordan Leisure are both having really good springs, looking like they're both going to be impact players for the White Sox. When we look at, obviously we're happy to have Joe Kelly back. But Joe Kelly is currently back with the Dodgers because he signed as a free agent. Like, we got 2 months of Joe Kelly last year in that trade, and we got 2 months of Lance Lynn. And Lance Lynn, he did what the Dodgers needed. He did help, obviously it didn't work out in the postseason, but he did help solidify that rotation so that the bullpen could get their rest and dominate, blah, 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 blah. But, in the long run, we may look at that Nick Nastrini and Jordan Leisure and say, gave up both of those guys for 2 months of Lance Lynn and 2 months of Joe Kelly. And then, I think one of the reasons that a lot of people are high on the White Sox end of this Dylan Cease trade is because I think there's some understandable skepticism about how good Dylan Cease is at this point.
Yeah, if you kind of look numbers wise, it's almost like the Padres traded for a right-handed version of Blake Snell. It's a guy who has a lot of walks, doesn't get as deep into games, has had dominant, or at least one dominant season in the past, but has issues with, a few things. And the good is, the ceiling is there. The floor is already what it is, which is a serviceable starting pitcher, maybe a 2 or a high-end 3. But, can he be a guy that makes a huge difference? We're not going to sit here and say no because we wanted the Dodgers to get him. And obviously we wanted the Dodgers to get him. We thought he could make a difference. So, it's not here to bash the Padres by any means, but it's just a matter of, they could have just signed Blake Snell like that. That's why, the money does play a huge part in it. You know, they let Soto go. They didn't re-sign Snell. Now they traded 3 other top 10 prospects, you know, to get Dylan Cease. At least they get him for 2 seasons. But, you know, it all kind of goes back to if you just had done things differently a couple other times, then you maybe wouldn't be in this position and you would have been in a better position. But us as Dodger fans, I mean, you know, the Padres want to be a mess. Go ahead and be a mess.
Yeah, and bringing in another right-handed pitcher with the Dodgers left-handed heavy lineup, you know, doesn't concern me that much. One other interesting note around the league, Devin Williams, who another guy we have clamored for the Dodgers to try to acquire, the Brewers closer. We found out on Wednesday night that he will miss the next couple months with a couple stress fractures in his back. Apparently he had back issues late last year, and then it flared up again this spring. Terrible news for Devin Williams. But you wonder with, you know, the Brewers have already traded Corbin Burns. Now Devin Williams is out. Like, I know the National League Central, like the winner of that division might win the division with 71 wins, you know, but even in a crappy division, the Brewers have to be thinking, okay, we're punting 2024 at this point. Don't you think?
Yeah. And if not punting, at least evaluating the future. Like, you know, getting into the postseason, yes, is a good thing. And we've seen teams make runs in postseason, but realistically with what the Brewers have, like, can you really see them making a run? They don't have a dominant ace anymore. You know, Freddie Peralta is really good, but he's not quite to the level of some of these other aces, and he could be. You know, you'll have Devin Williams back by a postseason if you make it realistically, but, you know, coming back from a back injury, I would imagine he's going to have some issues. So all in all, yeah, you look forward, you say, hey, do we really think we're going to re-sign Willy Adames when we traded for a shortstop, you know, that we got back in the Corbin Burns trade? Maybe not. Maybe now is the time to get ultimate value for him, because if Adames struggles early in the season, you know, as desperate as maybe some teams may be for a shortstop, they're not going to get max value if he's struggling.
Yeah. And so if the Dodgers were to engage the Brewers about Willy Adames, you know, which would mean probably moving Mookie Betts back to second base and, you know, giving up on Gavin Lux, you know, or at least temporarily giving up on him. Lux does have minor league options available. But, you know, if they were to engage the Brewers about Willy Adames, do you think they also talk about trading for an injured Devin Williams, knowing he wouldn't pitch early in the season? But, you know, they're already, we know they're getting one. We're hoping for one deadline acquisition in Clayton Kershaw, you know, possibly another deadline acquisition in Dustin May, you know, to pitch out of the bullpen, you know, get going for a Devin Williams to come in around the All-Star break or whatever. I don't hate that idea. He's got 2 years left on his contract.
Yeah, exactly. Worst case scenario, he doesn't pitch this year, but he's ready next year.
Yeah. So, you know, I still don't think I'm aboard the Willy Adames train yet. I still believe in Gavin Lux, and maybe that may end up on my headstone. Here lies Jeff Snyder, who still believes in Gavin Lux, and I hope Gavin Lux believes in me as much as I do in him. But, you know, so I'm not there yet, but you know, like we said, games start counting really soon. And if Gavin Lux doesn't get things figured out, then, you know, no matter how much I believe in him, the Dodgers might have to do something different. And seems like Willy Adames would be available if the Dodgers went knocking. So yeah, I think that'll do it for us for today. You got anything else, Vince?
Nothing else.
All right. We want to thank you all for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. We especially want to thank our everydayers. Those of you who are with us every weekday morning, it really does mean a lot to us. We enjoy talking Dodgers with you. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. Be sure to tell your friends and family who love the Dodgers about this show. Maybe they'll love it too. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. And remember to check out Locked On Sports Today on March 20th for the season previews. You can become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's just a few bucks a month with a 14-day free trial, and you can email back or text back and forth with us through that. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. Our DMs are open over there. You can also email us anytime you want, lockedondodgers@gmail.com. Or you can send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK, 5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.